destroy Trump media. We also hope you'll set your DVR. You never miss an episode. Let not your heart be troubled. The news continues. The one and only Laura Ingraham is standing by. Miss Ingraham.
Sean, excellent show tonight. You're absolutely right.
Thanks.
The rush to judgment, the rush for the guns, it's reflexive, and we've seen it time and again. And if this was such a big priority, we would have had gun control passed by President Obama, but that wasn't a big priority for him.
Well said. We can protect these kids, Laura. There is a way. We could secure anything we want. We just have to have the desire, and that's not political. Protecting kids.
As you pointed out, Hannity, the Israelis just, they deal with stuff. I mean, they had this problem. They dealt with it. Right. And you don't have any more school shootings in Israel. You just don't have it. So we got to learn from the people who actually do it right. Sean, thank you so much, as always.
All right. Have a great show. Thanks.
All right. I am Laura Ingraham. This is the Ingraham Angle. And as the nation mourns the heartbreaking Florida school shooting, Democrats go on the attack, immediately politicizing this tragedy. We're going to take a look at the fascinating theory that may be the real key to stopping these tragedies, one that demolishes every progressive cliche about gun control. Plus, Steve Scalise will share his unique perspective on what it's like to be in the gun sight of a mass shooter. And also, with four plans on the table, the Senate cannot agree on anything except defying the will of the American people on the issue of immigration. But first, the Florida shooting and the proper response. That's the focus of tonight's angle. Wednesday's mass killing in Florida was an act of pure evil by a young man who fits a certain profile. Of course, the almost instantaneous reaction from politicians, mostly on the left, is to demand swift action against guns.
Why does the United States of America have such a high rate of mass gun violence? The answer is very simply that, consistent with the Second Amendment, we can tighten the rules that apply to gun purchases.
It only happens here not because of coincidence, not because of bad luck, but as a consequence of our inaction. We are responsible.
I have said over and over, I'd rather pass gun safety legislation than win the election.
And the Oscar goes to, oh, Nancy, the drama. But seriously, as our security experts discussed last night, the focus on this or that type of gun or what caliber or how long it was, that misses the point. Nikolas Cruz was determined to kill one way or another. But that obvious fact seemed to elude today's media echo chamber.
More people will die in America by guns this year and next than died in a decade in Vietnam. And yet, Congress does nothing. The president does nothing.
Why so many mass shootings? Is it contagion? Is it the culture? Does it have something to do with the lack of respect for life around us, or frustration, or mental health?
You can't deal with this issue without dealing the availability of guns. You just can't. Sorry. It's a fundamental aspect of every one of these.
Look, I think Mike Barnicle makes a decent point there. The culture of life, are we supporting it? That's a good point. But the rush to the guns. Cruz passed a background check. He had no prior criminal convictions. So most of the media's high horse puffery makes no sense at all. It is not the gun that walked up to the school with an intention to carry out a Valentine's Day massacre. It was Cruz, a man with a warped mind, maybe some underlying condition we still don't know about, but he was set on revenge or on fame, or maybe a combination of the two. And in a way, this focus on the weapon in these cases, it absolves us from doing the real soul-searching necessary. It's difficult to do that. And from seeking answers that are real. So we actually might stop this from happening again. We have a Second Amendment in this country. The Supreme Court reiterated our personal right. It's an individual right. The God-given right to keep and bear arms. We have 300 million guns privately owned in the United States. 40% of Floridians own a gun. So let's be honest here. Okay, onerous gun control laws or all-out confiscation is not an option. It's not going to happen. And if it was, President Obama would have made this a focus, as I said to Hannity earlier. And those 2 terms he was in office, that would be as important as, Obamacare or any of these other priorities. It wasn't. Why? And look, with people with real mental health problems, in many cases, they are barred from purchasing a weapon. And maybe we can do more there. That debate is a good one to have. But let's not also forget, they still have to be identified. They still have to be properly diagnosed. Somebody has to usually do an intervention, a family member, a close friend. That creates a host of other challenges. And limiting access to guns or magazines, that's not going to stop another school shooting. Chicago has some of the tightest gun restrictions in the USA. Yet there were more than 4,000 shooting victims in Chicago in 2016. And gun deaths there rose by 61% between 2015 and 2016. 2017 numbers aren't all that much better, but those are still coming in. Outlawed or not, criminals will find a weapon. The gun debate that we have after these events misses the point. We have to start looking at the shooters themselves and what contributes to their acting out in these horrible ways. Common sense and a little human concern may have stopped this shooting from happening in Florida. May. Nikolas Cruz is described by classmates as a loner, as a freak, as an outcast, and as a troubled kid. Both of his adoptive parents were dead. Mother died on November 1st. He apparently had trouble with a girlfriend. That's not a big deal. But one thing we know, he was isolated and ridiculed. Even at the school, it's a very tolerant, open school, he was separated, segregated, and the school eventually expelled him. As a society, and on social media, we shun, we degrade, and we ignore people with abandon. This is particularly true of the young. And while, of course, nothing can explain away this evil, it's just evil, got to call it that we saw unfold yesterday. Perhaps, if we become more familiar with these warning signs, teach these warning signs, we could actually end up saving lives. What are the common traits of these mass shooters? Well, here are some of them. American Psychological Association has a long list. They are isolated. They are prone to violence, sometimes from the home front. They oftentimes abuse animals as young children. They're members of broken and at times, yes, violent families. Oftentimes, they seek solace by steeping themselves in social media. That's their only home. That's where they can be the big shot. And when a person poses with guns and knives and declares his intention to be a professional shooter, and the FBI is notified of this, I'm sorry, but somebody should have stepped forward. Someone should have intervened. The FBI could not have had a more obvious sign that Cruz was going to kill, because he announced it on YouTube.
In 2017, the FBI received information about a comment made on a YouTube channel. The comment simply said, "I'm going to be a professional school shooter." No other information was included with that comment, which would indicate a time, location, or the true identity of the person who made the comment. The FBI conducted database reviews, checks, but was unable to further identify the person who actually made the comment.
I'm sorry. I love the FBI. The FBI can surveil American citizens, right, as we saw with what happened with Carter Page. But with all its power and authority, they can't identify the person who posted the comment? Did the FBI contact YouTube? And if not, why not? They should have gotten Cruz's address, visited him, questioned him, found out where he previously attended school, and notified the school of Cruz's disturbing comments. I know they're busy. I know they have a lot to do. But when someone is online saying, "I am going to be a professional school shooter," with everything this nation has gone through, I think it requires more than a visit to the guy who reported him, or 2 visits. Again, this is just common sense stuff. And if the tech companies have to be part of the solution here, too. It's not about the privacy of Nikolas Cruz that matters here. None of this was done, however. We need to know more about how this process broke down. And perhaps this would have made the difference. But, of course, we'll never know for sure. In his comments today at the White House, the president struck the proper note. He spoke to the other kids who perhaps feel the way this shooter did.
I want you to know that you are never alone and you never will be. If you need help, turn to a teacher, a family member, a local police officer, or a faith leader. We must also work together to create a culture in our country that embraces the dignity of life, that creates deep and meaningful human connections, and that turns classmates and colleagues into friends and neighbors.
I thought that moment was one of the president's best moments of the past year. I mean, I really believe that. That's exactly what we need to hear. By the way, you got a lot of trash from people like Jennifer Rubin saying, oh, he'll never be the consoler-in-chief. Get out of here. It was a terrific statement. And aside, by the way, from the mystery of evil, what it is, where it comes from, that none of us can fully comprehend, this tragedy reminds us that human connectivity, what the president was talking about there, real relationships. I'm not talking about social media friends, people you've never met before. This is critical. This is the sinew that holds us all together. You think about the media, TV, film, video games, billboards, music lyrics. Not saying that caused this, but it does tend to desensitize all of us, and especially young people, to violence. And even the preciousness of every human life, the dignity of every human life, the absence of strong family bonds, and love. This can't be ignored as we look at how these things unfold. I worry that in this rush to find quick answers for this awful, senseless, evil tragedy, we race for the gun and we forget the human component, the human being that pulled that trigger. When my 3 children and I prayed tonight, we do it together every night, but we prayed tonight before I came to the studio. We prayed for Florida, for the safety of all Americans, and for us to love each other more. It's a prayer we should all share. And that's the angle. Joining us now with reaction is Bobby Chacon, a retired FBI special agent. Bobby, I appreciate your joining us tonight. Obviously, I had some tough words for the FBI, and everything in hindsight is 20/20. Well, they should have done this, should have done that. But when you have someone posting on YouTube that they are going to be a professional school shooter, to me, that's one of those red flags that can't just be, you know, swept away with a couple of visits to the guy who reported on him. What could have happened here differently?
Well, we've got to ask those questions, and the FBI is going to have to answer them. And so, by all indications, they did rush right over and see him the next morning when he reported this. And so there was some urgency to it. Now, where they got lost in the process, where they were not able to find him, whether it was a subpoena to YouTube that went in and answered, or hopefully it was actually served on YouTube. What information was available at YouTube? Did he use different information that they couldn't find? I don't know. I don't know the answers. I'm sure the FBI is doing some soul searching and looking at this and reviewing it. Hopefully, lessons learned. This is, you know, the nightmare of every law enforcement officer or investigator, right, when you think you could have found something and it didn't. You know, but this is one piece. There was a mountain of evidence sitting over in Broward County. The school knew it. His teachers knew it. His classmates knew it. When I saw one of his classmates say, I heard the school was shut up, and then when I heard who did it, I wasn't surprised. Well, that means that people knew in that area that this potential existed. Now, whether we need to give the schools more tools like the Baker Act or an expanded version of the Baker Act in Florida where they can take somebody like that off the street, put them into a psychiatric facility for 72 hours for an evaluation, I don't know. But that's where a conversation needs to take place. People knew, and the FBI was working one small angle of this, but there were many videos online that his friends or classmates knew about, and if the classmates knew about it, the teachers know about it. My niece is a school teacher in Florida. I had a long conversation with her tonight about this, and teachers know everything the students know. It gets fed up to them. They knew, the administrators knew, to shuffle this kid off and expel him from the school and think he's going to be... He's going to be somebody else's problem.
And he's someone else's problem. And look, the school is dealing with a lot of kids from broken homes. You know, my sister-in-law just retired. She taught for 35 years. The stories she told about what's happened, especially over time, with the level of domestic violence, other things, It's scary. I mean, so they intervening, and then there's a privacy concern, and then the school gets in trouble. Then they get sued. The lawyers rush in. So I think that's part of it. Just going back to the FBI for a moment, because you're right, there are all sorts of red flags. But the FBI is the trained professional organization who's supposed to be able to see, see ahead, see 3 steps ahead on this. So my question is, his name did show up as Nikolas Cruz on the YouTube posting. We see it there.
Right.
Only 6 people in Florida spell their name as, I guess he did on that posting, very similar to that posting, 6 people with the K. Quick visits to those individuals could probably quickly tell the FBI whether that individual was going to be a problem. And it maybe at least scare the individual. I mean, again, it might not have even changed anything, but finding out where that individual went to schools,
But you said 6 individuals in Florida.
Yeah.
Those agents in Mississippi, they wouldn't have even known to look in Florida.
I think there were 12 nationwide. Yeah, 12 or 13 nationwide, 6 in Florida.
I mean, the first thing you do is you run them through wants and warrants. Is he convicted of a crime? Is he wanted for a crime? You do those things, and then you start branching out. Social media didn't exist mainly when I was doing my main investigations. Now, social media is a huge part of investigation. So, you have to be conversant in searching on social media and doing those types of things in an investigation. And I assume they did that. Like you, I'm waiting for the answers to see what lessons can be learned.
The subpoena question, yeah, Bobby, the subpoena question is an interesting one, and I think this is where, again, when I lay blame, hindsight's 20/20, as I said. But when someone says, I'm going to be a professional school shooter, to me, you got to bust down all the doors to figure out who that person is, just because of everything this country has been through. And YouTube, all the tech companies have to help out. If we can hit like a home plate at Yankee Stadium with a cruise missile from like 7,000 miles away, we could find out who this person was. That's my sense.
Absolutely, and we're not afraid of those tough questions. They just make us better. They help us learn and get better. And so, the FBI is not afraid to face those tough questions. And in this case, hopefully we will, and we'll get those answers, and we'll learn from it.
Bobby, thank you so much. Great insights, as always. There's another aspect of this story we're going to get to tonight. Earlier today, Nikolas Cruz was a member of a white supremacist group. PBS, Uproxx, many others, big news organizations ran stories claiming that this was confirmed by the leader of this white nationalist group. Except now, police are saying there are no apparent ties between a white nationalist militia and the shooters. By the way, this group has 10 members and is run by a complete nutbag who rides around on a bike with he's a total whack job. Joining us now to discuss this, another rush to judgment, is Fox News contributor Raymond Arroyo. Raymond, this is wild, but I saw this pop up on my phone. I'm like, my detector, my blank detector went out.
And the media always gets ahead of its skis on these things because they want to get there first. They want to get the story.
Not just that. They want him to fit a certain profile.
They want to assign a political motive, and we've seen this again and again. Now, today what happened is this white supremacist guy, this Jordan Jarab, who's head of this odd militia group with like a handful of people in the woods, he claimed that this kid, Nikolas Cruz, trained with him in Tallahassee. Turns out he was wrong. But he told the Anti-Defamation League and the AP this story, and it spread like wildfire. But later, even the Southern Poverty Law Center and others said, no, this didn't happen. We can't confirm this. Now the Leon County Police Department says there doesn't seem to be a connection.
Why would you why would you rely on this freak from this white nationalist group as your only source of information?
Because it's a hot headline.
Ding, 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 ding.
It's a hot headline with a political edge. We've seen this before.
Tell me about what happened with Gabby Giffords. What happened with
Gabby Giffords in 2011, you'll remember, they were blaming Sarah Palin's year-old website that had crosshairs on certain districts. And they said, well, look, there's a crosshair on Gabby Giffords' Arizona district. This must be the reason the shooter got involved. Turned out to be a complete
The Pima County Sheriff said Jared Loeffner, the guy was named Clarence Dupnick. He said that he targeted the Tea Party in his comments, and he said that the Tea Party creates this atmosphere. That's Jared Loeffner. Created this atmosphere where people are triggered. This is Gifford Shooter that triggered this guy. Like the Tea Party is to blame. It was reprehensible. He even said he listened to talk radio at some point.
And Bloomberg, you remember with the Times Square bomber in 2010, he said the guy may have set off this bomb because he was upset with the health care plan, President Obama's health care plan.
Thank you, Mayor Bloomberg.
We've got to be very careful of these political motives. It's a rush, and we undercut real investigative reporting and law enforcement's discoveries, and also we miss the human dimension, what really might be motivating these kids to enact horrible violence on their peers and discovering the next kid. That is an important part of this story. You hit it in the angle. I think it's right on.
The rush to politicize always seems to go in one direction. Meanwhile, we're going to talk to Steve Scalise coming up in just a moment.
My congressman.
Yeah, and we love Steve Scalise. A Bernie Sanders supporter shot him, but that kind of got swept under the real fast. That, they don't hear about that anymore.
No.
That was a Bernie Sanders supporter.
Very interesting how they deep-sixed that. But look, this is evolving. Yeah. It's a fast-moving story, but it's important to get it right.
We'll learn more. Raymond Arroyo, thank you. And most of us, by the way, can only imagine the horror of surviving a mass shooting. My next guest, as I said, Scalise, he lived it. Steve Scalise will be here. Unique insight on this Florida shooting up next. Thankfully, few know what it's like to be targeted and shot by a maniac attempting to mass murder. And our next guest survived that harrowing ordeal, but endured grueling recovery after being critically wounded. Congressman Steve Scalise joins us with his unique perspective on the Florida school shooting, immigration. We got a lot to cover. Get over here. Good to see you.
So great to be on your show. Congratulations on getting that.
Absolutely. I can't believe we missed you at Mardi Gras.
I know. Roden Bacchus, and you were out there on the streets. I would have pummeled you with all kind of beads.
You hit me with a medallion right here. It's still bruised. I can't even touch my nose. Let's talk about what these kids are going through, what the school is going through, the rush for gun control, your colleagues pushing that. Blumenthal, Pelosi, Chris Murphy from my home state of Connecticut instantly goes to the floor of the Senate and says this is disgusting, basically pointing the finger at NRA politicians.
It's disgraceful anytime there's any kind of tragedy. I mean, a shooting, a bombing, whatever. Immediately you've got a group of legislators that go run out and start calling for gun control to take away the rights of law-abiding citizens. And they don't even know the fact of that particular event. And again, look at their bills, read their bills. They have nothing to do with these kind of shootings. What I first think we need to do is pray for the people that died, and there were unfortunately way too many people who died, but the families too. And all of these kids, Laura, there were a lot of kids that witnessed this that are going to have this with them the rest of their lives. The prayers helped me tremendously. And unfortunately, there's some on the left that actually mock praying for people. They say, oh, do gun control, don't pray for people.
That's so trite.
I needed those prayers. Those prayers helped me and my family at a really difficult time, and you could feel them. These families need prayer. They need counseling. They need help. But look, let's go find out the root of these problems. And we're already seeing there were so many things that slipped through the cracks. The telltale signs were there. I mean, when every kid in the school says, geez, I mean, this kid was the one that we knew would be a shooter. Yeah. Why didn't anybody else know about that? I mean, these are the problems we need to go address.
Bill Clinton today tweeted about the assault weapons ban. He said, look, in my 10 years, I guess 10 years or so, the assault weapon ban was in place, 94 to 2004. He couldn't have gotten that particular weapon. What do you respond to?
You know, you go find your law that was going to prevent this or the next shooting. And first of all, whatever criminal did these actions violated a whole host of other laws, too. So if you think there's some magic unicorn law that's going to stop it from happening, just keep in mind he violated probably dozens of laws already, including murdering people. It's against the law. So, you know, this idea that one magic law is going to stop the next one from happening, it's not. What you do see in common, number one, you see a lot of mental illness in common, but you also see gun-free zones. Shooters know that if you go to a gun-free zone, you're the only one with a gun and nobody else has. Fortunately, with me, I had 2 law enforcement agents that were with me that had guns that could counter the shooter. And ultimately, that's what took him down. It was other people with guns that took down the shooter. Every day in America, there are people that use guns to stop crimes, to defend their own families. That's what our founding fathers wrote about, by the way. They believed in an innate right of people to have guns for self-defense. And these people that want to take away your rights, guised under all of these tragedies, go pray for the families. Care about these families. Don't try to promote your agenda in the middle of a tragedy.
How are you doing in the aftermath of those? Now that you've gotten through all these surgeries, you still have to use those crutches to walk. You kept such an unbelievable attitude. I know there were so many dark days, but you kept. It was inspiring. Well, I mean, it was inspiring to so many of us. I mean, we were talking about it earlier. But do you have any PTSD from what happened to you? Do you have flashbacks to that day?
I really don't. And I mean, look, I've talked through this with my security detail, with my colleagues that were out there on the field. Yeah. I mean, look, this guy intended, and if there weren't other people with guns to stop the shooter, there would have been 15 members of Congress executed that day. And there weren't, luckily, by the grace of God, first of all. I mean, there were true miracles that happened on that field. I saw them. I experienced some of those. And so I don't focus on the negative. I saw so much good in people. I saw millions of people praying for me that I never met before.
Yeah, I was one of them.
It was, thank you for the
We had great prayer
It
chains.
mattered. Yeah. My own community, obviously, family, friends, that mattered so much. But then just the kindness of strangers, and I saw it in so many different ways. I mean, you know, Bono did a U2 concert. I'm a big U2 fan. He prayed for me before his concert at the beginning of a concert.
He's a big gun control guy, too, but that's all right.
But, you know, he prayed, and it really did matter. So, I mean, the power of prayer is real. And look, I got to see so much of the goodness in people, and I'm still working through, you know, going to physical therapy 3 days a week.
Are you in pain constantly?
I don't have constant pain. I have some issues I'm still working through. And obviously, the nerve damage, especially on my left side where the bullet entered. I'm, you know, trying to learn how to walk again without crutches. And look, I want to go compete for my job again at second base. I was a starting second baseman.
I was going to say, I played college softball. We're getting you out there. We're going to play.
This is hard pitch,
no doubt about it.
80-mile-an-hour fastball in a major league ballpark. You know, I want to get back out there again.
Come on. No bullets going to stop you from going out there.
I'm blessed. I'm blessed by God to be able to spend time with my family, to be able to get back to work again, doing some really neat things.
And let's talk about immigration, because the president had 4 pillars. They seem to be represented in the Goodlatte bill and the House of Representatives, which I've supported from the beginning. 800,000 got amnesty, not 1.8. But this thing went down in flames in the Senate today. I mean, a lot of Republicans voted against the president's idea of how to move forward, which I found to be stunning.
Well, you know, and this is why you take votes. You need to see where people are. And look, getting 60 votes in the Senate is going to be hard for anything. Getting 218 in the House is going to be hard. I'm a co-sponsor of the Goodlatte-McCall bill. This bill really does solve the problem. And by the way, we're working with President Trump and his whole team. You want to talk about border security, building the wall, ending chain migration, ending this crazy lottery. You pick names out of a hat.
Democrats don't want to end chain migration. They want to explode immigration to replace the electorate.
And we solved the DACA program, not with a amnesty path. You get in the back of the line. You be like everybody else if you want to come to this country. This is a great country that people still want to come to because of the American dream. Let's make it about merit. Let's get back to rule of law.
Do you think the Democrats want to give Trump a victory on immigration, really?
I think right now they're more concerned about politics. But look, there's a growing number of people that want to solve this problem. This Goodlatte-McCall bill solves the real problem. If somebody's got a better idea, bring it. But that's a bill that deserves merit. I hope we pass it.
Congressman, so great to see you. I'm gonna see you in Mardi Gras next year.
Next year,
now that I'm hooked.
You know, you're gonna ride on the float.
Oh, come on!
It's so much fun.
I'll visit in a mask.
And
I'll
then
pretend
you eat
I'm
all
one
that
of the...
great food in New Orleans.
Oh, come on! Great to see you. And you look great. And I'm playing softball with you.
Great to be with you.
All right. Well, Democrats, Congressman, are howling, as we said, for more gun control laws to keep kids safe. But a top crime researcher, most respected, I think, in the whole country, said they have it exactly backwards. More guns, less crime. He wrote the book. We'll talk to him. Democrats, maybe a few Republicans, began calling for more gun control even before the basic facts of the Florida shooting were known. There were still bodies inside. But my next guest says more guns, not fewer, are actually key to ending school shootings. John Lott is the author of More Guns, Less Crime. Also joining us is Igor Volsky. He's the vice president at the Center for American Progress. Professor Lott, let's start with you. When people hear more guns, less crime, it's like, whoa, what does that mean? That sounds like totally wild, and that can't possibly be true. Florida is a state where 40% of the people there own a gun. Guns are readily accessible if you pass a background check. 18 years old and get a long gun, 21 get a handgun. So they got a lot of guns, and you still had a big shooting there. What's up?
Well, people have a lot of guns, but it matters whether you can have it with you or not. And you look at all the big mass public shootings that they've had in Florida, and each one keeps on occurring in those tiny areas within the state where people aren't allowed to be able to go and defend themselves. These criminals may be crazy in some sense, but they're not stupid. They try to go to places where they know people can't defend themselves because they want to kill as many people as possible. And they know the longer it takes for somebody to arrive on the scene with the gun, the more damage they can do.
Are we sure that any of the security guards, a young woman today who was at the school, a student, said there were 5 security guards at the school, usually at each entrance exit point of the school, including a police officer. I would assume the police officer, we haven't gotten to all these facts yet, though. I assume a police officer would have had a gun at the school, or no?
Right. Well,
and that's one person at a school of 3,000 people.
Right. There apparently was one police officer who had a gun, but he never, for some reason, we still don't know why, was around when the attack was occurring. You know, the thing is, though, police, a uniformed officer, has an amazingly difficult job in stopping these types of attacks because if they're present, it's like kind of wearing a neon sign saying, shoot me first. They're the
So you
ones,
want people who are teachers?
people who don't stand out and they don't know who has a gun to take out first.
Igor.
Well, look, the problem is, as you point out, there are just too many guns. And the fact that this guy was able to obtain an assault weapon and was able to kill 17 people despite the presence of a police officer there really kind of explodes this whole argument that if you have more guns, you're safer. You line up the states that have the least gun regulations, they have the most gun crime. If we're gonna be serious about this problem in America, these school shootings, everyday gun violence in America, we have to move towards a country with fewer guns. It's just that simple. It's what the rest of the world has done.
Right. Well, that's obviously not going to happen. I mean, I like to deal in the world of reality.
Big goals for our community, for our safety. Americans are waking up.
Okay, so your goal or your thought is if we have mass confiscation of weapons, where the government will go into the homes of all those people have 300 million guns. Yeah. They're going to go, but these are the same people who say you can't deport 20 million illegals, but you can go into the homes of people who have 300 million guns and take their guns. I like to see those hillbillies take their guns away. I don't think it's going to happen.
You know what? Not just my thought. You look at public opinion polling, you see overwhelming majority background checks, assault weapons bans, but also licensing for firearms. Hey, if you need a license to drive a car, you should have a license. But you don't want that. You want confiscation. That's not going to stop a bad guy from doing something, though. Oh, licensing, registration. He went through background check. He didn't have a conviction. He wasn't a judge mentally defective. Yeah, he
had none of that.
Should not have had access to that kind of weapon. That's what I'm saying.
But with what indicator would have stopped him?
Those weapons should be banned. Those assault weapons need to be banned. And most Americans agree with me.
Okay, so he's right. I think depending on what polls you show, Igor's right. The people who say, why do we need these guns, long guns, even though there are a lot of AR-15s in the United States. AR-15 type weapons are very accurate, actually very accurate and very good for self-defense.
Why do you need those kinds of weapons?
Well, why do you need any weapon? I guess you could say the same thing.
No, it's an assault weapon.
You don't want to ban things just on the way they look. You want to ban them, or at least talk about whether you want to ban them based on how they function. These are inside guts are essentially identical to semi-automatic hunting rifles. But just a point on the polls. You know, there are all these polls, but you look at when Bloomberg has put up these background checks initiatives that you claim that there's 90% support for, he lost in Maine. He outspent the other side 6-1. He won by 1 percentage point in Nevada, despite outspending the other side 8-1.
I don't want to talk about Bloomberg. All I can tell,
but that's you're bringing up the polls
that have expanded background checks, like Connecticut,
have seen crime go up.
That's just not true.
No,
have seen fewer gun deaths.
Look, Wyoming has Wyoming, North Dakota has the highest gun violence. I mean, they have you can get a gun really easily in those, but
though crime rates are high,
crime rates are high in Wyoming.
Gun deaths in those states are high.
It includes suicides and Western
you don't
states.
think suicide is a death we should prevent?
If you're talking about Western states, which have high male populations relative to females for older ages, you have suicides. But if you look at the states,
suicides are a problem.
Okay, guys, we're almost out of time, so wrap it.
If you look at the states, when they adopt stricter gun control laws, crime rates go up. When they adopt,
that's just not true.
It is.
Sorry, John, that's just not true.
Overwhelming evidence. People can go to our website.
It's just not true.
You go to my website, I have a whole list of academic papers. The overwhelming number of academic papers find
we know Chicago has really tough gun laws and they have a disaster. We know Baltimore has horrible, horrible crime and has some of the most difficult, toughest gun laws in the country, Maryland and Chicago. So, I mean, look, I think we can look at these polls and you make some points, Igor, which I think are right. People hear assault weapon, they go, oh my God, we got to ban it. Question is, what
it is.
They think it's an automatic weapon. It's not. But great conversation.
Automatic weapons are banned.
They are.
You don't have crime with automatic weapons because they're banned.
Right.
Gun bans, gun restrictions
France bans them and look at the mass public shootings.
When's the last time you heard someone use a machine gun?
All right, guys, we got to roll. We're going to go black here otherwise. In other news, the public may want tougher immigration laws, but senators have their own ideas. So